Hey guys, Dan here. Been a long while, but I have been busy, and as you can see, this is one of the things I've been busy with. I have been busy on learning how to make my own Hackintosh. Meet El Hackitan. As you can see, this is well, it says it's a 27-inch iMac. Obviously it's not, but yeah, this is running a Intel Core i3 dual core 3.4 GHz CPU, 12 gigs of DDR3 memory, and a GTX 650 Ti 2 gig graphics card. By the way, this Hackintosh only cost me about £27 altogether, because the motherboard, the CPU, and the RAM, they were all my brother's old computer parts, which he handed off to a mate of mine who never ended up using them, and so I ended up having them off him. Yeah, the graphics card was my old graphics card, which I gave to my brother, and then he stopped using because he upgraded it, and so it was just lying around. And the rest of it then, the power supply and all the hard drives, all of that was from the old salvage from the old PC, which you can see back there, which is a massive thing. So the only thing I really had to spend any money on was the case. You know, I could have reused that case, but then I would have another motherboard just lying around, and I didn't really want to throw away a perfectly good motherboard with 32 gigs of RAM that I could potentially use for something else in the future. So £27 for the case all seemed good. The motherboard is a gigabyte motherboard, which I'm told if you want to do any kind of Hackintosh project, go with either a gigabyte motherboard or an Asus one. And there seems to be more gigabyte options that are Mac OS compatible than Asus, but yeah, it's all online. I used I think it's Tommy Mac or something, the website for all my things. But yeah, I'm going to tell you now the reason why I've gone with El Capitan over a more up-to-date Mac OS, and that is simply because, one, I don't have any AMD graphics cards, so going Mojave onward was just not an option because I didn't want to run on integrated graphics, especially not with a dual-core i3. But not only that, I had a lot of issues trying to get High Sierra and Sierra running. The problems I was encountering were when I would get them to the desktop, but the graphics card, right, on High Sierra, High Sierra was the closest I got to getting a working Mac desktop. At first, it just would not recognize that it had an external GPU, or that it had a dedicated GPU. It kept on showing either integrated graphics, like 4400 Intel, whatever, or nothing at all. But even when it recognized that it had a GTX 650, or at the time I was trying to get my 1050 Ti working, it would just say that it had something like 6 megabytes worth of video memory, which I just couldn't figure out how to fix. I tried a few different fixes, none of them worked, and some of them even resulted in the computer no longer booting up at all. So I gave up on that, attempted to go with Sierra, because I know High Sierra came out at around a time where Nvidia and Apple were having a bit of a tiff. So I decided to try Sierra. Had the exact same problems, with the exception, or with the difference, that this time it wouldn't even recognize the integrated graphics, and the integrated graphics were showing 6 megabytes of video memory. So I ended up giving up on that, and for a while I ended up just settling with something like Elementary OS, which is a Linux distro, just because I wanted an alternative to Windows, because I'm getting a bit tired of Windows 10 now. So I tried that for a while. I couldn't get on with it, because the one thing I find this a lot with Linux OSs, each one tends to miss out something, like a key little feature that just makes you wonder why. And one of the things it missed out was its ability to use multiple monitors in a reasonable way, and one of those is monitor extension, right? It allows you, right? It has two options, right? You can either duplicate the monitor, in which case if I move the mouse here, it would do the exact same thing on this screen, which I think is for if you're doing a presentation. That's not what I wanted, but the other way it does it is it just extends the monitor, meaning you have 3 monitors, you can move your mouse between them all, but it will only show the toolbar at the top and the dock, which, yeah, right there, on your main monitor. Now, I wanted this setup so I could go from desktop to projector seamlessly. You know, if I just turn the projector on, I want to be able to, it just comes up, I move the mouse over, and I can just simply go from, let's say if this is the projector and this was the main monitor, I wanted to be able to access the dock on here like that, and then if I move over to the projector, where's the mouse yet? I just go down and it comes up there as well. Elementary OS didn't allow that, so you know, needless to say, I didn't like it, Elementary OS, so I gave up on it. And I did notice, I started looking at more tutorials on Hackintoshes and whatever, and I noticed that a lot of them, even if they didn't stick with it and they upgraded to a newer OS later on, most of them started with El Capitan. So I decided, okay, I'm not going to go all out into it. I'm just going to see if it works. So I got my my Tosh drive, which is just an old Toshiba 160 gigabyte laptop hard drive that I've put in this enclosure. I unplugged the SSD, which I had Elementary on, plugged this in, put an El Capitan bootloader on a USB stick, went through all the process like I did before with the other ones, and it worked. And at first, it booted up and it recognized its own video memory straight away. It didn't have any sound, which but I fixed that with using just the Clover, this Clover configurator, I think it was. I tried getting my 1050 Ti working on it, and it wouldn't recognize it at all. You know, it just wouldn't recognize it. So I thought, oh, never mind. I'll try my 650 Ti, and it worked straight away without any drivers or anything needed. It recognized, as you can see right there, GTX 650 Ti, 2 gigs. So, and I think the most I needed to do was I needed to download like a web driver just to get video playback smoother, but it just worked. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I just decided to stick with El Capitan, and one of the reasons I recommend, if you are trying to make your own Hackintosh build for the first time, my recommendations are go with a gigabyte motherboard. Maybe I think some Asus ones do, but you can look up lists on compatible motherboards, but by the looks of it, gigabyte seems to be the most compatible. So gigabyte motherboard, Intel CPU obviously, Nvidia graphics if you are going older than Mojave. If you're going Mojave onwards, then you want to go with AMD obviously, but I think then it depends if you've got one at hand or whatever. But for this kind of build, I'd recommend go with an Nvidia graphics card, and I recommend you start with El Capitan. I think this will probably work up until the 10 series of Nvidia GPUs, but yeah, don't quote me on that. Like I said, I've got a 650 Ti. I do have a 970 Ti that my mate also gave me, but I didn't try that one, mainly because it has a faulty fan on it, so I didn't want to really bother with it. But anyway, this is my Hackintosh, and now you know why it's called El Hackitan. Yeah, it's a silly name, I know, but still. Yeah, let me know what you think. If you have any questions regarding it, I don't know an awful lot about this Hackintosh thing. You know, like other people who are able to do, you know, fixes and things like that without even looking up online. They can just troubleshoot themselves. They know way more than I do. You know, everything I know is just from what I've experienced with this current build. So, but and I don't really know what else to say about it. You know, it's a very, I like Mac OS now. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave it there, and yeah, see ya.